Welcome to Billion Dollar Startup, where we bring you visionaries and disruptors who have started, scaled, sold, or invested in a billion-dollar startup, also known as a unicorn. We also feature tech founders who are building the next billion-dollar startup. Billion Dollar Startup is a unique podcast sponsored by Dragon X Capital, the venture capital firm that concentrates on seed and early-stage tech companies with the X factor.
Hey Ivan, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine. He is starting a kind of tech startup, and he was just asking me about, hey, should I bootstrap or should I talk to VC and raise money? I thought that would be a very good topic to discuss for like the billion-dollar startup. What do you think?
It depends on a number of factors, but generally I tell people that if you're starting a company, the very first thing you need to do is to really focus on what is the problem you want to solve before you spend a dime. And then you have to think about what is the team that you want to assemble. Mm-hmm. And if you're able to recruit at least one other person to co-found with you, or at least help you start the company, mm-hmm. and then you think about, okay, what's the best way? It used to be that you could start with nothing at all and be able to raise some capital. These days, the mentality has changed. Become family and friends. Yeah. And still you can do that, but I will explain to you why I have other ideas. But I think at this point, the expectation is that the founding team has to show some things towards being able to raise money. Mm-hmm. So the idea is if you're able to raise very small amounts of friends and family, that's okay. And by small, maybe 100 grand, 200 grand, something that will allow you to demonstrate what is the problem you're solving, who you're solving it for, and so on and so forth. But in the long run, I am hugely in favor of raising institutional venture capital versus bootstrapping. Mm-hmm. Several reasons why. If you're bootstrapping or raising money only from friends and family or high net worth individuals or family offices, you're not going to know if the road you're going down the path of is actually a valid one or not. Institutional capital brings with it a high degree of validation. Yeah. And these types of other capital sources do not. Also, if you're bootstrapping, your rate of growth will be not as high as those that have capital to grow at a faster rate. And the higher growth rate in our world is worth more. So if you choose to bootstrap, you're going to be in a very different type of a category than a company that has raised capital. And you will remain a bootstrap company and your growth will be low and so on and so forth. But the same token, the moment you raise capital, I highly recommend that it's institutional capital and not high net worth family, high net worth individuals or families, and that you're in the business of high growth, capital efficiency, and that is a much better way to go.
And I think a lot of founders, they're afraid of almost that accountability. They're afraid of, hey, it's my idea and I'm not comfortable either sharing it or I'm not comfortable. It's almost putting it in front of like a group of like savvy, intelligent investors, VCs, and kind of x-ray your business and say, hey, this, you think, because we all think we've got the best thing since sliced bread, right? And then when they talk to a VC like us, no, we saw that last week. Right?
So let me give you some of the examples I've experienced. By the way, Bill Gates famously said, ideas have the shelf life of a banana. Yeah. And so the reality is, if you have a good idea, it will be copied. Yeah. And no one cares. Yeah. And the best example of it is there's been a lot of people that were first to market with their ideas, but they're no longer around. Yeah. The best example is a company called Novell. Novell owned 100% of the computer networking market. Yeah. It's not even around because Microsoft...
Google is not even the world's first search engine either.
No, so it's not that. It's all about execution. So that anybody, which is, by the way, one of the reasons if anybody tells me they're worried about their idea being stolen, I immediately pass because that's the dumbest thing I will have heard. So that's number one. Number two, I've heard, I don't like VCs.
Then you're not going to grow.
Then you're not going to grow. And that's another stupid comment. VCs can be your best or your worst partners, just like a relationship. Yeah. If you don't
like a good marriage, right?
A good marriage relationship
versus a bad marriage, yeah.
So if you know what to do, you find a good one, and they can help you enormously. And it's not just about a capital; it's a lot of other things that they can help you. The other thing they say is, I don't want to get diluted.
Yeah.
If you're so worried about getting diluted, how are you going to hire the best employees, the best
I always
executives?
say, if you're worried about getting diluted, you're delusional.
You should be worried about creating value versus being valuation sensitive. The entrepreneur's job is about creating value, maximizing
and build a team and build a company.
Build a team and build a company. Or they would say, like, if I go to them, they're going to take control of my company. And that is nonsense. A VC doesn't have time to take over your company. Their job is to maximize.
It's the last thing we want to do.
It's the last thing we want to do.
No.
So I've heard lots of other excuses, but at the end of the day, it's all excuses. And it is those are the people that we don't want. So they end up going to families, high net worths, because they tend to be families and high net worth individuals are not as valuation sensitive, but there's a very negative side to it. It is very, very common for me to see companies that come to me for help, where they raise a lot of money from friends and family offices, so on and so forth. And
it's almost like when they go to VC, it's now the real world.
Correct, but by the time, if they've raised too much and they get to institutional now, there's already infighting, there's misalignment on the board. The company has raised too much money, the cap table is pretty screwed up, they have raised some debt on top of it. And the investors around the table on that board are not thinking about the ultimate success of the company. They're all thinking about their own individual positions.
Correct.
And that's the worst misalignment.
And the company's screwed.
The company's screwed, yeah. So for that reason, I believe in early adoption of institutional capital, but with a lot of diligence and with a lot of care.
So there's your answer. Should you bootstrap or should you raise capital from venture capitalists?
In the beginning, a little bit of bootstrapping to be able to demonstrate the problem you're solving, who you're solving it for, and how you're going to do it. But at the first available opportunity, the institutional capital would be extremely valuable if selected properly with diligence and if it's the right fit for both the VC and the entrepreneurs. It would be a good relationship to have in the long term.
Until next time, happy unicorn hunting.
Happy unicorn hunting.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of $1 Billion Startup. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit DragonX.com for more resources based on today's topic, as well as for access to previous episodes. That's DragonX.com. Thank you for listening.